Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to presentation number 11, session number 11 of our 12 sessions for the Power PixelPoint POS system. And my name is Scott Dunlop. So what we've covered up to this point, let's just take a really quick review. We've covered through everything front end in terms of all the different components that showed up on the various screens and so on. We've gone through in terms of things like delivery and pickup. We've gone through quick service. We've gone through table service and all the bells and whistles that go with each one of those forms of dining. We jumped into the back office and we went through all of the pull-down menus with all of the different selections and so on. And there was one that we kind of glanced over because I left it for today, and that is backup. So that's one of the things that we're going to be covering today is backing up of the PixelPoint system and give you some ideas in terms of where we are and where we're going with this as well. Also, as you can see across my desktop, hopefully you can see across my desktop, I've got a number of different icons that I've also pulled out of the PixelPOS folder as well. And what I'm going to do is just walk through all of this different stuff, and we'll see how well we're doing with it. And that should cover us all for today. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is take a look. Basically, what I've done just for your convenience is I've created these shortcuts on the desktop, and I will present all of these on here. Just give me one moment. Okay, very good. All right, so here we go. Within this, the first thing we're going to take a look at is the different forms of backup. Now on this, the first one I've got here is this one called Backup 10. Now some of these you may have in yours, some of these you may not. Some of these you can get off the internet as well. So within here, I'm just going to take a look at this one. Now in this is called backup10.exe. Located within the PixelPOS folder. This is our older and original version of backup. We've made a few enhancements to it, of course, but let's just take a look at what we've got here. First of all, it's a very straightforward form of doing a backup on the system. You identify within the backup DB the directory that you're going to do the backup to. And so within here, I'll save it, for example, C:\temp. It can be anything electronically compatible. So it can be anywhere on a network, for example. It can be on a redundant server if need be, or on another folder within the same server in any case. And within here, you just identify the destination of it. Within here, rename the backup to date and time. So this way you can have backup and backup and backup without them writing over top of each other, because the names will be a little bit different. And the reason why they're different is because you've included the date and time of that backup within the name of it. Delete the transaction log. Now, what I'm going to do here is, just as soon as I finish this little bit, is I'm going to explain exactly what it is that's backed up and how the system is actually designed with this in mind. There is a transaction log that's also created within the same folder as well. And what the system can do is actually delete that old log. You'd still have a copy of it within the backup, but you would be starting with a fresh log from that point on. Underneath that, delete transaction log only if larger than, and then you specify in terms of the size of the transaction log file. Once again, I'll refer back to that in just a moment. And then down at the bottom, we have backup and validate. Validate is necessary for you to make sure that you have proper data integrity with your system. There's no use having a backup if it's got crap in it and the thing's not going to work anyway. If it's a bad backup, there's no use in even having it. It does you no good. So a good thing to do is validate your database before doing the backup. Now what the validate will do is just go through and from a file structure perspective, just go through and make sure that all of the information is proper and in place. And then you can run the backup. Now within here, as you do the backup, this status screen will then populate with the information that's occurring. So for example, I'm going to do this right now. Okay, it's a good idea to validate the database before do that. Actually, let's do that. So here it's going through all of the database tables within the PixelPOS system, and in here just making sure that they're all correct. And then from there, just doing this. It'll run through, and it's very quick because basically all it's doing is just backing up a file, and it's a file that I'm going to show you in just a minute here. Here's the status of everything was done. Validating database, done. No errors with the database. Performing the full backup, done. And error performing full backup. Oh, I hope not. Okay. So anyway, that's what that does. Now, let's take a look at what we've got within our system here. I'm going to go into my C drive, and I'm going to go into the PixelPOS folder. And within here, no, actually I don't want to do the PixelPOS folder. I want to go into this one here, PixelSQL. Now, the PixelSQL database, here I'm just going to just stick some stuff out. Just ignore the rest of it. There are two files that reside within the PixelSQL folder. One is called PixelSQLBase10.db. The other one is called PixelSQLBase10.log. Now, the DB file is the PixelPoint database itself. This contains all of the programming that you've done within the back office, and it also contains all of your operational data, and that is like time and attendance, for example, anything sales and transaction related, anything else involving money or inventory or whatever else. The whole shooting caboodle is all stuck in this one file called PixelSQLBase10.db. And so when you copy that from any one location to another, you are taking all of that across, and when you pop it in, and boom, you've got all of the programming that's been done within there, along with all those transactions and so on. This next one down is PixelSQLBase10.log. This is a log of transaction information and also operational information as well. It's just a log file of all of the stuff that's been going on within the DB file. And what will happen is that this will also build up over a period of time as well. Probably in some cases maybe even faster than the database itself. The reason being is that as things occur on the database in a real live system, then this file can get larger and larger, and if not cleared out eventually, then it can be up in the gigabyte size. So you really want to make sure that you do regular backups on these systems, for one, if for no other reason, just to make sure that this log file is kept clear. And as far as the database file itself, the DB, this is really what you're copying across within that backup. It's taking this and putting it into a folder. In this case, it was my temp folder, for example, and putting it within there. So that's what happens within this whole backup here. It takes that DB file and takes a copy of it out of the way. Now, question here. Why do we need this when we can't just take that file and just copy it over to another folder or another location? The reason being is that if it's on a live system, then you have got SQL running at the moment. And so if you try to copy the DB file while SQL is up and running, then you'll actually run into an exception error. It will not allow you to do that because it's busy doing other stuff. And it's linked in with that SQL. This backup does require SQL to be running. So it's actually not only takes care of that, where you can take a copy of that DB file while SQL is running, but also it's designed actually for that whole environment as well. Now, I have this other file here. Let's just take a look at the properties on that. And it's called pixelbackup.exe. Now, there are actually three corresponding files within your PixelPOS folder that relate to this. There's this one right here, and then there's this one called pixelbackup.exec, and there's this one here called pixelbackupserver.exe as well. And these two files here work in conjunction with this. This is actually the user interface for that whole function. And what we're going to do is take a look at this right now. Okay, so what you'll have is this screen coming up, and it says PixelPoint Database Backup Manager. And within this, you can actually set up, it's quite robust here. There's a lot you can do. You can set up all kinds of things pertaining to different forms of backups, different destinations of backups, hold backup plans, and so on like this. And also within this, it's very well designed in terms of offering restore points as well, so that this way, if I got multiple backups and, well, this one is a little better than that one, then I can actually revert to specific restore points in that case. Now, let's just take a look at it. The first thing we have here is Backup Now, pretty straightforward. This works in conjunction. It's the same thing as what Backup Now is, that function within the back office where you, if you went into General Setup and the pull-down menu within there, and you will find Backup Now located within there. And if you select that, it will actually do the same thing as what I'm about to do now. So in that, it will present this screen. And in this, once again, you define in terms of the destination that you're going to save this to. Down at the bottom, we have a couple of things here. Database validation required. So you can select on that, which means that when this is done, validate the database first and then do the backup. Underneath that, we have compress archives as well. So what this will do is actually zip it all down to a smaller size, which is a really great thing compared to what the other backup does, which does not do that. So if you have, for example, a database file that is a gigabyte in size, the older backup will still give you that gigabyte file size, whereas this one will actually compress it down into a much smaller size. All right, with that being done, select on OK. Now here, what it's going through right now is a validation of all the database tables, just as the other one did earlier. And there, I'm into the backup. It's done all of that. Boom, it's all finished. Now, it's also designed for an auto close in 12, 10, 9, 8 seconds, or you can just click on exit in any case. And here, it just gives you an idea of all the stuff that it's gone through as it's done it. I'll just let it time out. There we go. Okay, and within here, I just did the default backup for that. Okay, notify on completion, so you can do that if need be as well. There we go. Now, that is a basic backup using the conventional backup utility for that. As you can see here, I've also got a button that says Setup. Let's just take a look at that. Within here, you can set up different backup plans. And within this, you can back up different components of the system, not just the whole thing at once as well. This is really effective for types of restaurants where they do a lot, maybe with members, for example, in which case then you can take the member database table and just do a separate backup maybe on that. So in here, I've got my default one. I've created one myself in a previous thing. So what we're going to do right now is just going to create new backup plan, and let's just see what we can do with it. Now, this is actually a wizard that will walk you through the entire process. We'll go through this, 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 and this as we progress through just by selecting on Next. So the first thing we have here is a backup name. Now, by default, it will just say backup plan number 1, 2, 3, and so on. But you can give it a specific name. For example, Scott's backup plan. Okay. And within here, you can identify some kind of a description that you want to put other than what is put in there by default. With that done, we select on Next. Okay, within Next, this is where we're going about using the scheduling for this particular event. So on this, schedule type. All right, we can leave it off, in which case then it's user request only, which means you have to select backup now. Boom, it'll execute this one. On selective day of week, so if I select on this, I can identify as far as which days of the week and run at and these times as well. We also have on selected day of the month. And so on this, maybe I might have one plan set up for the 15th and one plan for the 31st or something like that. So in any case, you can identify the days of the month, or in this case, I'll just do it on a daily basis. And here I'll say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay, I'll take off these other ones. So run on those 3 days and at whatever time I want. All right, now the next thing here is the method of rotation of information and restore points. Keep this number of backups. Okay, so for example, when it creates a backup, it will put a stamp on it, which will keep each restore unique, or each backup unique. Now on here, I may just want to keep, let's say, the last 3 backups rather than, one every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example. So that being the case, what I can do here is just keep n number of backups, which would be 3 in this case. You can go 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 1, 0, or whatever. All right, but in this case, I'll leave it for 3. And on here, we also have some additional plans as well. 3 restore points, the Hanoi schedule, 5 restore points, and 9 restore points as well. If you're not sure what any of these are actually what governments use for their forms of backup. And it's a pretty comprehensive plan that breaks it down in terms of how the whole thing works and where to store these at different points and restore points and so on like that. If you really want to get in-depth with any one of these plans, you can follow something like that, or just do the Scott Dunlop quick and simple, don't tax my brain too bad type of plan. Okay, underneath that we have a backup directory, and so within here you put within here the path that you want for this. Once again, it can be any form of electronic path. And if you have it actually set up for internet access as well, you may even be able to put it in for remote backup to your office as well, which is a good thing to do. I know that when we were first designing this thing, we did set it up for that as well, for remote internet backup. I just don't recall the way to do it. But just check with the documentation. I think we have something in there on that. The next thing, database validation required, so you can check on that, compression as well. And I recommend both of these. Off to the right-hand side, notification via email. So if you, once again, are set up on internet and email server capability, then on success, maybe even on failure as well, or either one. So if it was successful, then you don't really know, but if there was a failure within the backup, you may need to know that it took place, and you can go and troubleshoot that and find out what the problem is, and then do a manual backup from that point by using Backup Now. Okay, so with all of that set up in place, the next thing I'm going to do is select on Next. And so within here, review of the information. Okay, so new or edit the backup plan may qualify for immediate execution, and so on, so on, so on like that. Mark as already executed. Okay, and so if you can select that as well, and then just select on Done. And you'll see now I've got Scott's backup plan set up within here as well. And so what this will do is do a timely backup of the database. Within here, it gives you the information, day of the week, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12 o'clock a.m. Wait for end of day, yes or no. So within there, that was all stipulated within there as well. And execution status, and if you need any further information on any of this, just select on the question marks for that. Keep the last 3 restore points, okay, restore points being the backups. And so within here, as you've got each one of these, keep each one of them. If the last one is no good, then I can revert to the second last or the third last. If you want, I could do a lot more than that as well. You can edit the existing plan, set up backup plan as pending, which means that I want to execute it later, but I may want to tweak it a little bit as well, or delete the plan altogether, in which case it'll be removed off the list. All right, and that's how you go about setting that up. Restore points. So within here, as you create all of these different backups and so on, they will be set on the hard drive. And what this will allow you to do is just retrieve the desired one that you want and load it in place of the one that's broken down. And that is Pixel Backup. Now with either of these, this one does have that scheduler, as I pointed out within here, but if you also want to work with Windows scheduling as well, I've actually got the shortcut here for Windows Task Manager as well. And either one of these will work with Windows scheduling as well, which in that case, you just select on Action, create a task, and just follow through the process here to add that backup program into Windows scheduling. So that gives you an idea in terms of what you can do with that. Now, there are a couple of other things that we've done within the system with regards to backup and also redundancy. Since we're just kind of on the topic, let's just talk about that. With regards to backup, there was also a form called Live Backup. Live Backup is very much similar, actually it's almost identical to this here, just with a little more interactive, where I was mentioning as far as database tables and so on like that. Live Backup, I just spoke with the lead programmer today, and they are actually going through some further tweaking on that right now. So there will be further changes coming down the pipe and some modifications to it. There was a couple of database tables they were having some difficulty with. So I'm going to hold off on that until we actually get the final story on that. And once that's done, then I'm actually going to create a presentation with regards to that, and I will post it on the MyPower website. With regards to redundancy, PixelPoint does do redundancy as well. First of all, we do mirrored server redundancy, and there's actually information on that on the MyPower website. You will find it, just do a search on it in the top right corner. And we have a full-blown document on how to set up a mirrored server on the system. So basically, you've got 2 POS servers. If one goes down, then here's the failover where you can flip over to the backup one. And also, we do offer node redundancy as well. But again, node redundancy is also being in the works as well, alongside with the live backup. And node redundancy is basically where I can have a backup server located within the same POS system. If the server goes down, it flips over to the other one. It's one of those situations where if the server goes down, can I still do transactions and so on? If you've ever been to a trade show, you've probably seen guys and they unplug the server and the POS is still functioning and so on like that. Yes, we do all that as well. Just a little bit of reality check though. When you're on a point-of-sale system and the server goes down, that also means that your communication is going down between all of the different stations. So yes, your POS station will work, but now it's a standalone. So bear that in mind. But we do offer all of that with the failover and to keep no redundancy. You've got synchronization between your different stations and so on, so they all have a backup of their own database that it maintains on a timely basis. But in terms of like a table service type environment, your remote printing will be down. You can only do transactions within the local station at the time. And if you're looking for credit authorization, well, if the agent for credit auth is on station 1, then stations 2, 3, and 4 will not be able to do credit authorization, only station 1. So, and we do mention all the reality of it as well within the documentation. So just be wary of that. That yes, we do offer that from a selling perspective, but in terms of reality, quite often, if you actually even ask these guys at the trade shows, well, then does that mean I can still do credit authorization from another station? Can I actually print at both the bar and the kitchen? And the answer will be no. It's the same with everyone else as well. So, but yes, the station will be up and running. You can do all that. All right, so moving on from that, let's take a look at some of the other things that we've got within the system here. And the first thing we've got is Fix Pixel Base. Now, let's just take a look at this shortcut for this for a moment. This is located within the PixelPOS folder, and it's called fixpixelbase.exe. It's also available if you go to Start Programs PixelPoint, and it shows up within there as well. This, for the technical people, this is your utility for getting in and doing some manipulation within the database itself. My recommendation, do not even think of doing this until you have done a backup. And if you're really not sure of what you're doing, consult with a PAR technician prior to doing it, okay? Because you could do some really serious damage by going into here. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so the first thing that comes up here is security on this. And so, of course, we have to put in our super secret number to get into it. And you'll see within here, it actually brings me into the database, database viewer. Now, in older versions, we did offer a whole menu of different other things and so on like that. We have since actually pulled, first of all, we've restructured the database, and so there's a lot of those utilities you didn't need anymore. Also, we've actually pulled a lot of those utilities out of there and made them available within the actual POS itself, so you don't need to do those anymore. But Database Editor is the critical one for all of this. Now, take a look at what we've got within the drop-down window here. This is a list of all of the different database tables that reside within the PixelPOS system. Okay, so virtually anything that you need to get into will be available within here, provided you can get in here in the first place. Now, within this, there are a couple of tables that pertain to transactions. I've mentioned this earlier. POS header, POS detail. When it comes to anything transaction-oriented, these are the chief ones for that. And just taking a look at it. Okay. As you can see, we've got a lot of information in here, even for the little bit of stuff that I've done within the system. Now, in here we have things such as transact, being the transaction number. Okay, so each number or each transaction, regardless of how much money is in it, is actually recorded on the system. Auditors do require this, as do we. So everything is actually logged within the system that way. We also have table num as well, being the table number. And so if you open table number 1, there's a table 1 transaction, 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. We also have the 30,001. Remember I had mentioned that within administrator setup, and no, within station setup, I'm sorry, under administrator pull-down menu. And within there, that's where you have quick service tables that are, in which case you're saving checks and getting checks and so on like that. And then we have a number of different fields across here that all pertain to that transaction when it started, and then the taxes that are applicable as well. Who started, who closed, and so on. So lots of information along that line. As you can see, a lot of it is real nitty-gritty data. For example, who start, right? 999 is actually an employee number. It is not like a person's name or anything like that. And so that being said, when it comes to editing any of these records, if you edit one record, you may have to edit several corresponding records in other database tables as a result of that. This is why it can get a little tricky on this, because you really have to know what you're doing if you're going to try anything like that. But that being said, here you can have access to all of these different tables. And in this, you can advance to the next and the previous and the first and the last records as well. You can refresh the display. Also within here as well, we've got this minus sign, which means that you can actually remove a transaction from this table. Just be wary that you may have to remove it from corresponding tables as well. And also the edit function as well. So I want to go in and I want to edit on this particular thing. We also have this little checkbox here. It says Manual SQL. By selecting on this, I can actually put in SQL-related commands to this, and that will allow me to do some manipulation either to what's displayed up on the screen or to groups of records. So for example, I'm just going to give you one simple example here. Select, let me think here now. Select star from dba.pos header, where, let's say, net total is greater than 1. I have no idea if this will work or not. It did? Okay. So within here, I put in an SQL command, and you really need to know SQL to get your way through this. From here, it filtered down all of these records, in which case I had the net total field, which is way over here. And all the amounts within here are greater than 1. Okay, just as a simple example. And within here, you can sort this information using these commands. You can delete certain groups of items within here, reset totals, and so on, different fields, and so on. Just bear in mind, first of all, there may be some database tables that do have a higher security level than what you have to even get into this and to make those changes. So in some cases, it may not do that. There is internal auditing that's all done within the system as well to make sure that there is absolute integrity within the data. Should we ever be hit by some form of government audit or something like that, PAR maintains integrity for the information it provides. But in any case, you can get in here and do quite a lot of stuff within this. So this is a good area to just be aware of, that you can go in and do some things like that. Just make sure you know what you're doing when you do it. And that's Fix Pixel Base. The next thing I have here is Overtime Agent. Now let's take a look at this. This is the agent that runs in the background. Okay, you set it up to within the startup folder. This is really good also if you're using this in conjunction with the shift rules as well. And the Overtime Agent will just run in the background, and it will actually internally modify pay rates and so on like that as you end up on overtime and so on. And so this is located within the PixelPOS folder. Let's just run it. Okay, so on this is what it looks like right now by default because there's nothing activated on this. What you want to do is select on Enable, and then within here you have all kinds of things that you can do with it. First of all, you identify the pay period. Okay, so on here, whatever the current pay period is, and then from that point it will maintain this on an ongoing basis. And start at this point, start at that point, and then can retroactively actually go back and modify all of those things as well. I can select on Run. I'll run it in just a minute here. Now we can go into Options as well and take a look within here. This is where you can identify in terms of what the overtime pay will be for all of these things. So in this case, after 8 hours, give me 150. That's 150% of whatever the person makes. Okay, so that's time and a half basically. And then from here, within the within the period, so it can be within days of the week, the whole week, consecutive days, and so on like that. And you can make changes to these. You can add in additional ones as well. In here, just identify as far as the hours before the pay rate as well, and also how you want it handled within all of this. If there's any of these that you do not want to have the system calculate on, just unselect the active key. You have to edit it first to do that, but there is an active key there. Just unselect that, and then what that will do is that will turn that off. It will still remain on there. The record will still be in place, but it will not be active on the system. and then run. And there we go. So what it's done right now is retroactively gone in and updated all of my overtime wages, and from there now, any time that I was doing for past 8 hours within the day, then it calculates as time and a half for that. And then just let this run in the background, and it'll just maintain itself on an ongoing basis, and make sure that the wages are adjusted accordingly with that. So that's the overtime agent. The next one here is clear all sales. Now, clear all sales is deadly. Okay, so just be aware of that before we even get into it. I do recommend also changing the password for this because it can be pretty dramatic. Now, in terms of what this does, this will actually clear data within the POS system. Now, as you can see here, there's a wide variety of forms of data that you can select on this. If I just left it as it is, this first one here, clear sales, will clear all of my sales right back to day one on this. And now some of you are probably thinking, oh, well, that's great. So then basically I can treat it like a cash register, and I can just do a Z-read, at the end of the day and so on, clear it all out, starting fresh again. You could, but this is not a cash register. This is a point-of-sale system, and what you use this for is when you're reinitializing an existing POS system under a new owner. That's really what you want to do with this, okay? Don't try to zero out all the totals and so on, because the auditors will still come down on you like a ton of bricks. And so don't do that. And you do not want to allow the end user to actually have access to this either. This is a utility for your technical people. So just be aware of that. Now, within all the selections here, first of all, clear sales, as I said here, this will clear all of your sales data, all transactions, all of that kind of stuff, right back to day one. Clear test data. This is something I'm going to be showing you later on. This is a network test utility that we do not advertise, but it is available and within the system, and I'll show you how to go about running a test on the database as well. Clear caller ID info. So one of the things, if you're using caller ID, there's a whole system interface for that you can do within this, so that, like, let's say this is a pizza place and I'm got the pizza delivery order taker. I can actually have a call display system that's set up on this as well, so that when John Smith calls up, it will recognize his phone number and his member record. I'll have it show up on the display. When I select on that entry, then his member record will be presented up in front of me, and I'm ready to go. As soon as I say hello to him, I know I've got his record up in front of me. So if you do need to clear out all of that caller ID data, that's what that will do. Clear employee performance data. Okay, this is all has to do with the employee performance points. Good performance, bad performance, spilled soup, customer compliment, that kind of thing. Clear reservations, self-explanatory. So within this, any reservations that are in the system, regardless of whether they're 6 months down the line or 6 months in the past, it'll clear them all out. Do not clear credit card history data. Now, by selecting on this, this will retain any legacy credit card information that is in the system. As I had mentioned earlier, PixelPoint is PCI compliant, which means that we do work in conjunction with the guidelines provided by the credit card companies in terms of data security and data integrity as well, to make sure that there is no credit card fraud and so on like that. But that being said, if you're doing an upgrade from an older system and for any reason you do need to retain some credit card history data on there, then you can select on this and it will retain that. If you leave that unchecked, which it is by default, it will clear out all of that old credit card information as well. Clear inventory data. Now, the inventory data that it's referring to here is not things such as the stock items like the cheese and the mayonnaise and the onions. What it is referring to is the stock levels within the system. And this is one actually that you may need to actually go in and clear out. If you do, just clear this, just select on this one and none of the others. And what it will do is it will set all of your stock levels back to 0. Now, by doing that, then within stock item setup, you may recall within there, there's that edit button, how many slices of cheese are in a pack, how many eggs are in a carton, how many olives are in a jar, that kind of thing. Then what you can do is you can use that edit button and you can change all those numbers. So what this one function will do here is clear off the whole thing. So if your inventory, that you try to set it up, oh man, it's a real mess, I got to change all these numbers around and so on, then the quick and easy way to do it, go in here, clear all your inventory data, all of your inventory stock levels are back to 0. You can make those changes and then do a physical count and you're all set. Clear cash management data. This has to do with everything pertaining to cash management. And within cash management, we have things such as the different safes that were created in there. It will default back to the generic general safe. Also, petty cash and all of its numbers as well will be set back within there. So all of your cash levels within the cash management system will be set back to 0. It will retain all of the safes that you created, all the petty caches that you created as well. It will also retain the programming of all of the denominations that you created within cache setup. But as far as all of the numbers that reside in terms of the safes and the petty caches and so on, they will all be set down to 0. And then from that point, you do a pay-in and you reestablish all the money that's within each one of those. Employee contest summary as well. So this has to do with all of the contests in terms of the numbers of items that were sold within any given contest. Once again, this all pertains to the data, not the programming. So the programming of all of the different contests in there, I have one for desserts, one for kids menu, one for something else. And those contests will be retained in the system. But in terms of the results from each one of them, in terms of how many points each employee collected over a period of time and so like that, that will all be set down to 0. So all of those contests will be they'll be all cleared out. Right. The next one here is clear member stats. Okay, points, amount due, and history. So this is all of the member activity information that's within here. This is a good thing to do if you're going to be transferring member data, member information, and so on to another database, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. And so within here, any of the points that John Smith has collected will be set back to 0. Any amount due, so he owes the establishment $50 or anything like that, that will be cleared out to 0 as well. Gift card information. No, I'm jumping ahead on that. I'll get back to that. Our gift card data can also be cleared out as well. So if there was either an existing balance or a prepaid balance, they can be cleared out from here. Also, their order history as well. So basically, you will have the member record, but you will not have all of his previous orders on there as well. Clear overtime, self-explanatory. So within this, any collection of overtime in terms of their hours that went above and beyond, that collected the 150%, for example, the time and a half, then all of that data will be set down to 0 as well. So no one is on overtime or coming close to overtime on that. And then finally, clear card sale data as well, or gift card sale data. So within here, anything pertaining to gift cards. Now this is internal gift cards and third-party gift cards. Both of this data will be cleared out. But that's within the PixelPoint system. If you're working with a third-party system, it will not be cleared out of those. So for example, if you're interfacing with a Mercury gift card system, then you would need to clear out separately within the Mercury gift card system in order to be able to do that. But anything PixelPoint related will clear that out. One more thing I want to point out is that when you clear off the sales data, this also includes time and attendance as well. So basically everyone's, all the employee records will still be in there, but in terms of like transactions they've done today and so on like that, and the time that they've accumulated and so on, all of that will be cleared out, all right, and it will be knocked right back to 0. So you'll have basically starting from point 0. Now this is a really good utility to run when you are in between owners. Okay, so for example, I've got an establishment that owned a PixelPoint system, and then from here they've sold it to another owner. They're going to change the name, change the menu, all kinds of stuff like that. Then what you can do is at that point, you can go into the system, run this, boom, all that data is cleared out, and you're set right back to 0 on that. If the staff records are going to be the same, then this will just clear out all of their time on it, and they will start right back at a beginning time again. It'll start with a fresh day, so that when you start up, it's as if an end of day had been run, and all of your data will begin from that point on. Okay, so lots of good stuff with regards to that. Defaults to clear all, so you select on that, and there's everything for that. Defaults to clear sales only, select on that, and gives you just the specifics on that. So these two kind of just toggle quickly back and forth to give you clear out the whole thing for initializing the system, or just clear off the basic components here for the system, as I had mentioned within earlier. Now, while we're on this, before I continue on with these other ones here, I'm actually going to take you into the front end. I'm going to show you that mysterious utility I kind of just glanced on without getting too committal about it. So within here, I'm going to start up my point-of-sale system. Now, in this case, what I'm doing here, oh, and I've run this. Okay, so here we go, and I'm starting with a fresh day. Actually, I don't know if we did. I'm not sure if we did this or not. So within here, when you start up with a fresh day, all right, pretty self-explanatory stuff here. Change the date if it's not correct, and then because we're working with touch screens, you can change around in terms of the current time and so on like that. Date and time are correct. I'm ready with that. I'm all set, and I'm ready to rock and roll with my day. Now, in here, as you see, I'm starting off with my basic system again. And on this, I am now, well, state law requires 30-minute paid break and so on. This is all part of shift rules. Sorry, folks. On this, I'm now Scott the technician. And on this, I have gone into the system. I've installed all of my stations. I have done all the wiring on the system. I've set up the server. The whole point-of-sale system is ready to go. There's one thing that kind of worries me, though. How is this system going to perform on Saturday night at 10 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night? Because that's probably the busiest time for this establishment is when you've got all the stations going, they're pumping through orders as fast as they can, they're pumping out checks as fast as they can, and so on. Will this system crash, or will it be able to hold up? Well, here's what we can do on the system. Located on your keyboard, what you need to do is plug a keyboard into the station if it doesn't have a keyboard attached to it. So you plug in a USB keyboard. And on there, on each station, press the F5 function key, F5, okay? Now what will happen here is that this little window will pop up. It says here, enter test password. Now the test it's about to do is as follows. It's going to just pump through as fast as it can bogus data to the database, okay? And it's just going to push it back and forth as quickly as it can. So in this, to get into this test, I'm going to type in the password, which is test, T-E-S-T, and then OK. So here we are within this window that now pops up. And on here, I want to run this test. So we just select on Start Test, and there we go. So what it's doing right now is showing you what the rate of transmission is for every 100 records that's going through. And it's just pumping through data as fast as it can. Now what you do with this is as follows. Leave it on here, move on to station number 2. Plug it in, run the same test. Leave it running, go to station 3, do the same thing. So by the end of it, all stations that would be doing transactions within any given day, you would have them all running this test at the same time. Now, what you're looking for here is not a specific number, because the numbers will change as you add on more and more stations. Okay, these numbers here will actually get longer and longer as they go to be able to pump through all these things. But what you are looking for here is inconsistency between the stations. The stations, for example, right, let's say hypothetically they were all sitting around, let's say, 0.9 seconds, for every 100 transactions, give or take, a couple of seconds. Then that would be fine as long as they're all doing that. Now, let's say station 5, for example, is doing the same test, and it's taking, let's say, 13 seconds to do 100 records, whereas the others are all taking roughly around a second to do. Then that tells you, okay, I've got a problem with that connection for station 5. And I might want to take a look either at the wiring on that or the distance between the station and the server or whatever it happens to be, however it's all hooked up. But what this is telling you is that I've got a slower station at station 5. Another thing you want to look for as well is the fluctuation of numbers. Right now they're all sitting around the same pace, and you just kind of take a look at that. And if the numbers are going really well, and then suddenly, whoa, it really slows down, and then they're going well, and then, whoa, it really slows down again, then you will see that, okay, the system is bottlenecking. There's something within my network setup that is actually bottlenecking all this data, and it could potentially crash the system. And the final thing to look for is actually a crash of the system. Maybe it can't take this test. What you're doing is just, shaking the foundation of this whole POS to make sure that it can actually perform up to speed and perform capably. If it does pass through this, then great, all the power to you. You're ready to rock and roll with that. Then you can go into clear all sales, clear all the test data, boom, you're ready to go. If it does actually crash, then you know, man, it's better it did it now than on Saturday night. And then from there you can find out why did it crash within there. And also, I mean, there's a lot of things in the system that could affect this. If there are any problems within the system itself and any error messages and so on like that, look for any log files, LOG file extensions within the PixelPOS folder. Okay, there's a wide variety of them pertaining to all kinds of different things. And within there, quite often you come across ones that pertain to exception errors and network-related errors and so on like that. So keep an eye open for that. Having done all of this, then you know we're happy with it. Then just select on Stop, Close, and you're back to normal. And that's it. Okay, and then as I had said, just go in and clear out all of that test data as well. And that's all done within Clear All Sales to do that. All right, the next thing I'm going to show you here is PixelPoint Update. Now, one of the things, as I mentioned within Fix Pixel Base, we had utilities in there that did a bunch of stuff, and we've kind of pulled them out of there, so it just focuses on database editing. And one of these utilities was actually an update of the system. So we have this thing called PixelPoint Update. Security access required again. All right, PixelPoint Update. So what this will do is this will connect into the update server, which is, I think it's located in Boca Raton, Florida right now, or it may be in Toronto. But in any case, it will check for the latest and greatest build for what you're working with here. Do you wish to continue? Yes. And so on this, now what it does, it takes all the stuff that I've got in my system, and on here, it will check for all the key EXEs, being System Set, which is the back office, PixelPoint POS, which is the front end, the Authorization Manager for credit authorization, some DLLs in my case as well that may need to be updated. And then on this, what you can do is either you can skip over them or you can say, yes, I want to update. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm in a presentation. And from there, it will go through and it will download all of those latest builds and put them on there. Now, that being said, don't do this on a live system. Okay, so you actually wait until there's no one logged into the system and everything's turned off and so on. Then, at that point, you can go into this and run that, and it will then download and update all the EXEs. Then you can start up the POS system, and you should be able to rock and roll with that. There will be a bit of a script that we'll skip through in terms of doing an update of the internal numbering within the system to bring it up to the latest version. Once you've got that, then you're ready to go. The next thing I have here is Language Edit. Now, for anyone who is doing any kind of work internationally, and that's as vague as I'm going to go with that, then what you can do here is you can actually make PixelPoint appear in any given language. This is the great thing about PixelPoint from a global perspective, is that I can make this point-of-sale system come out in Chinese or Arabic or Spanish or whatever it happens to be. And all you need to do is just load in the appropriate language table and it will provide it within here. Now, here's how it works. This is a user interface for editing a file called newlanguage.txt. Okay, newlanguage.txt is a text file, and we actually have different languages provided on the MyPart website that you can download. Or actually, you may even have them in the install CD. I'm not sure if they put that in there or not. But anyway, it's called newlanguage.txt. You put that within the PixelPOS folder. And whatever the language is within there, then that will be loaded into this. And so what you'll see is side by side all of the different records that correspond to this. So let's say, for example, if I had a Spanish one in here, then I would have just for record number 1, OK. And then right next to this, I would have the Spanish version of OK. And from there, I can keep that as it is, or I can change it. And also, as you go through with new versions of PixelPoint, you will want to update this as well, because as we add in new items, new components, and so on, there's always new text that's added to the system as well, because we're using words that we didn't use before. And so what you may find within this is that you need to actually update this, because some of the records way down at the bottom, for example, they may not be in older versions because those words were not required until we added in some new function or new application or so on like that. Now, each one of these words or phrases is actually coded as well, language number. So for example, here we've got language number 203964, and this says assigned stores. So someplace within the system, there is a field or a field that describes something pertaining to stores and says assign store. That's actually what sounds like a head office type thing. And so within there, if you needed to change that to some different form of wording or translate it to a different language, then you can do that right within here. Now, in terms of, first of all, the different language, let's focus on that for a moment. With that new language file, and here we have new language right within here, and you can load in whatever it's going to be. Open the language file and look for all these different ones. Hopefully, well, no, I've got English in there. That's the only one I've got right now. Oh, no, there's Spanish. Actually, we can try that. Okay, and I didn't want to load it in there. I don't want to mess it up on my thing. All right, I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm not going to get into it right now. But within here, you can load in the Spanish, and it will show them side by side. Actually, I think I have to exit out and back in, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then within there, you can make the translations to that, or whatever the language happens to be. Now, one little word of caution here. If the language happens to be symbol-based, then it's a little more complicated than that. And within the MyPart website, I think we do have information in there pertaining to things like Chinese and Arabic and stuff like that, because you can't really throw in the symbol-based information within here. This is all text-based. But what you would have is the text-based coded translation for each one of those. All right, that's anything beyond that, that's outside of my level of expertise, so I'm not going to try and go further on that. But another nifty thing you can do within this, and this is what a lot of people will probably be interested in, is that without loading in another language table, what you can do is go in here and make changes to certain words that show up within this. So let's say, for example, within the end of day report, and it may say within there, add tips, and you don't want tips, you want gratuity or charge or something like that, or whatever it happens to be. Then what you can do is actually go in here, and you can find the appropriate one that you're looking for, and then from there you can make the change to it. Let's say skill level, for example. Skill level is within the employee scheduler program, and if I don't want to call it skill level, I'll call it well, I can't change it right now. You can actually go in and change it within here, but I haven't done that. I haven't set this up to do that yet. But within here, you can actually change that particular record within the language table, and this is actually a user interface for Fixed Pixel Base as well, because this language table is in there. So you know that record number 203924, just change that to competency or something like that, and you can make that change that way on it. All right, so that gives you an idea in terms of what the language table does for you, and that's language edit. The last one I'm going to show you right before we go to break is one that was kind of spreaded up from an earlier question that we had in one of the previous sessions with regards to the importing of product data. And I did do a search on that. Actually, I did a whole video on this, and I'd forgotten I had done it, pertaining to this thing. It's called pixeldatatransporter.exe, and there is information on this. Do a search within the MyPart website on data transfer or transporter or import or something like that, and it'll give you information on this. Now, the PixelPoint data transporter, what does this do? This actually allows you to take information from one database and import it into PixelPoint. And the other database does not need to be a previous PixelPoint database. It can be some other form of database as well. The only disclaimer I have for this is that you have to be well aware in terms of the fields that you're working with and what information specifically you're trying to massage into the system, because if you really aren't familiar with the tables and the fields and so on like that, you could be massaging the wrong information in there, and you don't want to do that. Now, welcome to this and so on like that. Import data from a CSV, common separated value file, into the POS database, or export data from the POS database to a CSV file. So it can go either way. The changes made to the database using this tool are permanent, cannot be undone. Before going through this import process, make sure you back up your database. Absolutely 100% Do not even think of doing this without doing that. And make sure you've got a backup copy of the database before you start mucking around with it like this. All right, having done that, we're going to just take a look at what's in there. So here are your options for this. There are 3 of them. One is inventory, being like stock items, for example. So if I have a whole mess of stock items that are created in my old database and I want to bring them into my new PixelPoint system, then you can go in here and select on this one and select on next to do that. Member database. Okay, so this is all, I've got a whole mess of members that I've accumulated within a previous thing. I want to bring them in, or products, menu items, and so on like that. So on any one of these, you can go into, select on the desired one you want, and then select on next. Now within here, first of all, you're identifying the source file. It does have to be in comma separated. However, it can be in a variety of different formats, by a comma, a semicolon, or a tab. And as far as the text qualifier as well, how are they separated, with what kind of symbol and so on. So you identify how that file structure is set up within here. My file has a header line as well. Some of them do, some of them don't. So depending on if there is a header for each one of those lines, you may have to take that into account as well. Loaded mapping profile. So within this, I can actually create a profile for this and save it in there in an XML format. So if this is something I'm doing on a pretty regular basis, then actually you can save all of this. After you've done it, 1 or 2 times, then you've got everything you need, and just keep repeating this process. If you've got a really great, for example, a menu, of bar items, or you've got a whole thing of inventory that pertains to a Chinese restaurant or something like that, then it may be stuff that's really worth looking at for that. We also have import options as well. Log files to be saved too, okay? So this is because you do want to keep all of this information, make sure that it's all retained in place. So within here, we have the path that you're going to save the log file of this transmission to, the agent mode as well. So within this, if you're using this as an agent, then within here, the folder will be monitored to new file process. So within there, successfully processed will be moved to here, and generating import errors. If there are any problems, go into these. And so what you can do is take a look at the status of each one of these in terms of the agent running, whether it's done, and whether there were any problems with it or not. Okay. And within here, if you do want to run this in agent mode, so that is you are transferring data back and forth between different systems, then you can set that up down here as well. Okay, so with all that in place, then you can go ahead and do that. All right, obviously I haven't done any of this, but once you get past this point, and I can't actually do that. I'm not going to actually load something in here and corrupt my database. But there is one more next beyond this, and what this next file contains is the schema of the database. And from here, you're matching apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So, for example, let's say the member first name will match up with your member first name. The member last name will hopefully match up with your member last name. But in the source database, they may be just one field, being first and last name. So you need to maybe do a little bit of massaging with the data like that to make the whole thing fit in. So there is one more screen beyond this, and it's, of course, the complicated one. Within the document, though, if you take a look at that on the MyPower website, you will actually find that screen on there, and it'll give you some perspective in terms of what needs to be done on this. It's a good thing to try out. My only suggestion here is that make sure you're just experimenting with it. So just grab a database, a couple of databases within your office, and experiment with this and kind of get an idea in terms of what kind of challenges you're going to be facing should you try to do this with a real customer. Do not make any promises with the customer that, oh, yes, I can do this, and so on, and then find out you're over your head when you get into this. So play with it first, see if you can handle it, see if you understand the data, and so on like that. If you do not, then you need to really study in terms of the structure of the database, the fields, and so on like that, in order to make the whole thing work. After you've got it all tweaked, just save as a mapping profile to map between those 2 forms of databases, and then just keep that on file, and then you can just load in the profile from there. Okay, so that's all I'm going to cover in terms of just the basic utilities that I wanted to point out for today. We're halfway through our presentation right now. In the second half, what I'm going to be doing is going into the POS again, and we're going to be kind of tightening up on a couple of things that I want to address within there in terms of the design of the system and some operational stuff and so on like that. So at this point, let's take a 5-minute break, and you can get up and stretch, grab yourself a cup of coffee or whatever, and then we'll get back into it for the second half. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, I'm back. Let's just take a minute for everyone to grab their seats, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so let's carry on. So where I'm going to go now is into menu setup for a moment. And in here, I'm just going to bring one up on the screen. All right, let's take a look at what we've got up on here right now. This is just a sample of an order screen that I've got up on the system here. Now, one thing I notice very often is when I receive databases from people who are trying to get their PixelPoint certification, one thing I notice quite often is that when they create their menu screens, the menu screens all look really bad. Okay, and the reason for that is because they don't really take into account the fact that even though I can put in all these different colors and I can try to make everything outstanding and so on like that, that's not necessarily a good thing, because you have to understand that when you're designing a menu screen, this is something that a lot of people are going to be using, maybe 30, 40 hours a week on an ongoing basis, and they really don't want something ugly to look at, first of all, and also difficult to navigate. Now, quite often what you have, for example, this is like one for a bar right now. And you'll see within here, I've got these buttons showing up in here. This is my order page grid. I've got beer and cocktails and wines and so on like that. Now, take a look at these for a moment. Even though I can create the buttons different colors, I don't necessarily should. It's not necessarily that I should do that. What you want to do is when you're designing a menu screen, make sure that you choose something that complements the establishment. Quite often, you can walk into any given place, and you'll see point-of-sale systems, and more often than not, they look the same, where you've got 15 different colors showing up on the screen, and every button is a different color trying to catch your eye. The logic behind that doesn't work. Okay, it's kind of like driving down the strip in Las Vegas, where everything is trying to catch your eye. You don't know where to look, and it's the same thing here. Basically, you can get so many colors on the screen that can actually become camouflage, and you don't want to do that. In order to program a professional-looking database, here's what you do. First of all, take a look at the establishment itself. You have to be actually inside to take a look, or at least speak to them, and say, what are the colors that you're using for your restaurant? And use that as the color scheme that you're going to use for the POS system in terms of the background and the buttons that you're going to assign on this. Really, when it comes to different buttons and so on, I'm going to close this one off. Let's just take a look at the other one here. This is a kind of a food and beverage one. And just taking a look at this, you'll see within here, it's nothing amazing to look at, and of course you can go as fancy as you want. But in terms of the logic that I provided behind this, all of my food items are one color, all of my beverage items are another color, and that's it. Match the items with the decor of the restaurant itself. And so in this, I've got my soups and salads, lunch and dinner, and so on like that. As you can see, I've got text on it, and the text pretty well covers everything I need. I don't need pictures on it. I don't need different colors on each one of the order buttons and so on like that, because the more you put on there, the more distracting it is for the stuff that you want otherwise. Let's say, for example, if I had lunch specials showing up in red, then my eye is always going to be drawn to lunch specials, but I may not want lunch specials all the time. I may want dinner specials. And so the logic behind that is, well, then I'll make that a pink color. And so now I've got a red color and a pink color, and my eye is drawn between those two, but I may want grill items. And so you carry on further and further, and you just get deeper and deeper into it. You don't want to do that. Be consistent with your colors, and it'll look a lot more professional. Also, give the text a chance to do its work as well, because that's why we have it on there. And when you're designing these things, make sure that you use text that works well with the logic of the person who's looking at it, because basically, if I'm Scott the waiter, I'm in a hurry, okay? And if I come up with cocktails, for example, and I've got all these cocktails, and then I got more cocktails, and they chose a Tom and Jerry, all right? So within here, I'm using a bit of logic to this. That first of all of my button items are alphabetized, so I know off the top of my head the alphabet. I can jump my way down to the T's, no problem. There's Tom and Jerry. I can do that. If I have a lot of things that have multi-word descriptions, such as a large this, a small that, and so on like that, it really depends on the logic of ordering that as well. Let's say, for example, within my non-alcoholic beverages, now in here, all right, and that's not a good thing to do either, but we'll talk about that shortly. But in here, if I had all kinds of different sodas, for example, I had Coke and Pepsi and 7-Up and Mountain Dew and whatever, and all of these, if I had them in sizes of small, medium, and large, and I just programmed them in that way on the screen, then small Pepsi is not necessarily a good way to go. I may want to go Pepsi small because I'm looking for a Pepsi, and then I can choose the size from there. So feel free to jumble around or move around the text a little bit to make it best suit the person who's looking for it, because they don't want to be slowed down with this. The quicker they can find the right button, the better it is for them, the happier they'll be with your work as well. In terms of doing a little bit of differentiation between these different things, you can actually do that. You just don't have to go to the degree of really massive color changes on this. Okay, I don't need to put in, if I wanted here, I actually may have something in here. Okay, here we do. So in here I got lines. And in here, I've made all the buttons the same color, but I've got my red buttons showing with kind of a red text and the white buttons with a white text. Okay, maybe red was a little too dark, so I went with maybe a pink, for example. But in this, that's all you need, or really just a minor shade in terms of like the beige, or a minor change shade within the blue, for example, or whatever color scheme you happen to go with. Because there are lots of different shades that you can go with and still provide, differentiate this group of items from that group of items without being so dramatic as like a green and a yellow, for example, or something like that. So make it subtle. It will look like a professional system. It will be easier to learn, easier to navigate, a lot more pleasant to look at, certainly compared to whatever the older system was that they came from as well, and you'll be appreciated a lot more for it as well. Also, when you're designing your screens, because you can design these any way you want, use some logistics behind this as well when you're designing these things. I have seen point-of-sale system to order screens that were in every conceivable way that you can arrange things. Look at it this way. I am the average person who is going to place an order. I'm standing in front of a screen right now. The average person is right-handed. So my hand is going to come in from the right-hand side when I'm selecting something. Now, what is the first thing I'm going to select? It will be the order pages. So it's nice to come in, and the first thing I come to is down here. I've got my order pages I can select on cocktails. Now, in order for me to select something else, I'm not covering up anything. Okay, if I had reversed this logic and I had cocktails up here, and I selected on that, then I actually have to pull my hand away to take a look at the items. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be pulling your hand back and forth a lot like this just so you can see what is on the screen. So if you can, kind of flow from the right to the left when you're ordering, or maybe from the bottom to the top, or the top to the bottom, but make sure that you're flowing your hand logically for the most part when you're doing this. So I come in from the right, I select on cocktails. From here, I select on brain hemorrhage, and there's my item right there. And then from this, I can just kind of scroll on down here with my hand, and I can select on maybe a modifier, for example, and I'll have those sitting up in there. So just kind of design it for a right-handed person. Have the buttons, if you can, over on the right-hand side of the screen, the order contents over on the left. And of course, when people are reading things as well, they read from left to right, so they will, when they're looking at the details of what was ordered, then it will feel more comfortable reading it over on the left-hand side and then working with the information on the right. And if you're left-handed, like I am, it won't be a big issue either, because you just typically work with it the way it's designed here. But the average person is right-handed, so just kind of be aware of that as well. When it comes to designing these things, less is more. So just regard it as such. Now, one thing I want to kind of jump over to here. I'm just kind of going to fill in some of these gaps right now. There was a question that actually came up today with regards to Web2Go that I covered in the previous session. And just a couple of things I guess I could have elaborated on. So what I'm going to do here is just jump into Web2Go for a moment. Now, the first thing I'm going to take a look at here is location lists. And in here, you'll see I've got within this USA, New York, and so on, and New York, New York. Now, within here, the question was, well, what if you have multiple cities? Well, then within here, you just press the carriage return, and you put in wherever. Okay, and you can continue on adding into this list. So there's no limit to the number of cities you can add into the list or the states or anything like that. It's just a matter of continuing on with your list that way. So that was a very easy answer to that one. There was also a really good question pertaining to what if you have a chain of restaurants that is using Web2Go, and they want to link them all together. How do you do that? Okay, first of all, Web2Go is not an enterprise application. All right, Web2Go is for a single site, and actually that's a really good thing, because that means that when you place an order on this particular system, it is going to be directly within that restaurant. They're going to have it. There's no question as far as what happened to the order, and it's going to be generated right on there, and they will collect the revenue for that as well. They will be responsible for the transaction and so on. Now, if I had a corporate website where I had, you know, all these different restaurants and so on like that, then what you do is you set up a store locator page. And on this you have, for example, store 1, 2, and 3 at their respective addresses and so on. Each one of them has a Web2Go system. When you select on that, you put in there a hyperlink to the Web2Go system for that given store. Okay, so in this, if I select on this link right now, rather than take me over to the local Web2Go system, I would be actually hyperlinking over to another website and their hyperlink to their local point-of-sale system for their Web2Go. And that's how you do it that way. So basically you select on the store first, and then from there, if they have a Web2Go system, then you're hyperlinked right to their login screen. You log in, do your thing, and have a nice day. If they are set up with a call dispatcher, then the call dispatcher actually can have an internal unpublished website that contains all of the store locations and do exactly the same thing. So if I call up, call 967-1111 or whatever it happens to be, then from there I get hold of a person and they say, okay, where are you calling from? And I'll say Timbuktu. And so from there they will know which particular store to select for that, and they will confirm that with the customer. Okay, do you want the store on Baxter Avenue or something like that? And they'll say, yes, that's the one closest to me. So they'll select on that, and they'll place your order for you if you're using kind of a dispatch type application. So in any case, it's just a matter of setting up a hyperlink to the local Web2Go server for any given store. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out as well. All right, the final thing is, as far as things that we haven't really programmed into the system, is credit authorization. Okay, because there's lots of stuff I was kind of, it'd be nice to kind of take a look at what we could do and so on like that, but we need credit authorization set up for it, and I hadn't really done that. So what I'm going to do right now is actually set up credit auth for it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into my shortcuts, and hopefully within here, yes I do, I got a thing right here called Pixel Authorized Manager. Okay, so Pixel Authorized Manager, let's take a look at the shortcut for this. It's located within the Pixel POS folder, and this is a system agent that runs in the background, and it manages anything pertaining to credit. Okay, now this is an optional system that you can do within PixelPoint. If you went with the standard license, then it doesn't necessarily have credit authorization in it, and so any credit cards you do and so on, you would be required to do through a separate system that you would maybe rent from the bank or something like that. When it comes to doing a credit card transaction, and if they add on a tip, you simply over-tender it, and the change would be the charge tip, okay, because there is no change given on a Visa or a MasterCard. So any overcharge of that, the change would actually be regarded as the charge tip within the system as well. But in this, what we're going to do is actually do it with integrated credit authorization on our system. So I'm going to run this right now. And there we go. So down the bottom here in my taskbar, I have this little icon that says Authorization Manager. It's a little spinning coin. You'll see that. And I'm just going to double click on it. Let's take a look at what we've got. So on here, I have credit check right now, and it's in the process. It says it's set up to accept requests and so on like this. Now, on this right now, I am not set up with any form of credit card verification system. Here's the way it works. You do a credit card transaction on PixelPoint with Credit Check running. What this does, it interfaces with a credit card verification system that is third party, because there's many credit card verification systems out there. And what that credit card verification system does is that it then connects in with the credit service. Kind of think of it as the bank. And it will connect in and say, here's a transaction, and do they have sufficient funds for to be able to process this transaction? And then the bank will send back to the credit card verification system saying yes or no. And then from there, the credit card verification system will connect back to Credit Check within PixelPoint and give you a yes/no answer on that. It's all at the speed of light, so it's pretty quick. But in my particular case, what I do is I do training classes. If you're a salesperson, you do sales presentations. And it would be nice to show how you do all this stuff with members and credit cards and so on like that without actually having to set up and use your own credit card to do all this kind of stuff. Within here, we have demo modes for all this stuff as well, so it's really nice that you can actually set it up that way. But to do that, you have to go into this agent to do it. So you just double-click on the $sign, you're presented with this window, and within here, we're going to go into Setup. All right, obviously, security required for changing this around, so let's go in and put in our super secret passcode to get into that. And here we are with the configuration for Credit Check. So let's take a look at what we've got in here. First of all, it says interval 3. That means every 3 seconds, this agent is going to send out and come back with to see if there's anything to send out in there. Okay, so on this, it's always going to keep this up to date, and you can change around this setting from 3 seconds. But generally, in most cases, that's pretty good. Over on the right-hand side, we also have some things in terms of maintaining logging of the information. Keep the credit card information or do not keep the credit card information as well. This all has to do with PCI compliancy as well. And also check security on the exit, which has to do with that login as well. You'll see as I exit out of this, it's going to present that. If there's any other advanced information pertaining to an interface to a credit card verification system, then you have these fields that you can fill in as well for that. The next thing we have down here is all of the different modes of authorization that you can provide within the system. The first one here says credit card payment system. So anything pertaining to a credit card, American Express, Visa, MasterCard, Discovery Card, anything like that, can be set up through here. Now in this, I have it set up to demo mode, approve all. Okay, and just take a look at the drop down for this. As you see, we do interface with other credit card verification systems such as DataCap, ETS, and so on like that. But also in this, I have demo mode, decline all, and demo mode, approve all. I've yet to find out why we would have decline all, but you could. But demo mode, approve all is really good for doing presentations and training and stuff like that. Just one important note here, do not leave it on demo mode when you're working with a live system. You actually have to tie into that credit card verification system and choose the proper interface for that. If you have it on demo mode, then you're in a lot of trouble if it's on a live system, because it will look like it's going through, but it is not going through. All right, within any one of these, if there is some form of authorization, let's say DataCap, for example, then the contents of configure may present something or may change from one selection to another based on whatever it is you need for that particular interface. So in this is how you go about interfacing to a DataCap interface system. On this, if I chose something else, let's say ETS, for example, then the contents may be a little bit different in terms of the information it's requiring and so on. In some cases, it may not require anything, such as demo mode, approve all, in which case then all it's going to do is little things pertaining to it, such as delay the processing, for example, but there is no configuration required for that. The next one down is debit card. Okay, so debit card, self-explanatory, you know what a debit card is. So in here, it's going to check across with the bank account number and come up with a PIN number. You have to pump that in and so on. So within here, you choose on whatever it would be for that. The next one down here I have is member card payment system. You'll see within here I've chosen Pixel Member Database. Now let's take a look at what I've got within here. First of all, there is a demo mode, approve all as well. But the nice thing is that when you're working with the Pixel Member Database, what it's doing here is actually applying anything pertaining to members and gift cards, internal gift cards. within the Pixel member database. Okay. Now here you'll see, for example, I got a member share gift card. Okay, that's a little bit different. Member share is a whole different thing. It's a form of kind of like an enterprise type application. But for a typical POS system, most especially to any salespeople who are listening in on this, you want to have the Pixel member database. And so what this will do is that it will interface whenever you're doing something member related. For example, I can give them house credit. I can also sell gift cards as well. And what this will do is refer to that Pixel member database table and say, okay, is this the right person? Here's the member the member access number. It's called MNUM, which is the MEMNUM, which is member number record. And then from there, it will correspond with that and see if there's a balance or a prepaid balance that is owing on it, anything like that. Then you can utilize this for it. And so it will maintain a balance within there. And so you can use it for demo purposes, but you can also use it on a live system as well, where you are using house gift cards and also member accounts as well. The next one down is front desk system. This all has to do with interfacing with PMS or property management systems, okay, like front desk system. So within here, we do full-blown micros Fidelio interfaces and stuff like that as well. So we do micros emulation. A lot of systems that are out there, because there are lots of different property management systems available. The vast majority of them do use micros emulation. And so that would be what you want to work with in here as well. Probably the Micros 27, 47, and 8700 series for that. In some cases, maybe the Encore or Fidelio interfaces as well. The next thing we have down here, what this will do, this will look to a room folio within the front desk system. Okay, so this is for situations in a hotel where I'm in the coffee shop and I order my breakfast and I want to charge it to my room. Then they can select on one for, let's say, a room charge, and it would be tied into the front desk payment system. From there, it'll interface to the front desk, check their room folios, see if they're allowed to do that, and if they are, it'll confirm with the name and so on like that, and the room number and so on. The next one down is gift card payment system. Now, as I mentioned up here, member card payment system and gift card payment system are two entirely different things. If you're using a PixelPoint gift card system, you want to use the member card payment system. Okay, if I'm selling a gift card using our gift card tool that is provided within the finish screen, then you want to use the member card payment system. You would use the gift card payment system for third-party interfaces. So you'll see within here we have things like ETS, Sterling, Mercury payment systems, and so on like that. So within here, if you're using a third-party gift card system, that's when you use this one. But for the conventional one for the internally within the PixelPoint system that I have demonstrated, for example, then you want to set up under this one, under the Pixel member database. Okay, so just make sure you know the difference between those two. Okay, along with this as well, allow cash out. Okay, so on this all has to do with cashing out of gift cards. On here, we have, for example, allow cash out of a gift card, and what is the maximum amount you want to allow on that. So, for example, I have a gift card, and this can work with either one of these, is that I have a gift card, and it's got a balance of, let's say, $4.92 on it. And the average item that I would order within the place is going to be, $7 and up. And I'm really not interested in keeping this. I just want to cash this out, and here, you keep the card and give me my money. So what you can do in this case then is you can select on allow cash out to allow the cash out of a gift card, and if so, what is the maximum amount that you can allow for this? Now this may be set corporately, or it may be set by state law as well, depending on that. So make sure that you check and you don't put in an amount that is not reasonable for that, because you don't want people just getting these gift cards and then coming in and getting their $200 worth of cash. You're clearing out the till that way. You want to set some kind of a limit on that, so make sure you're aware of that. Now, if you make a change to anything in here, the system is going to require that you restart credit authorization. Right? You must restart Authorization Manager to take effect. Okay? And on here, I'm going to exit. Now, remember that security thing, so on here, exit anyway, yes. Here, it's now requiring that in order for me to close this thing, then I need to have my super secret password just to close it off again. Okay, otherwise, if someone was in there and tampering around with it and so on, then it'll be stuck open if they don't have that access code. In here, I'm just going to double click, and there it's running again in the background, and I'm all set with that. Now, coming into the back office, what do we do to set up credit authorization in here? The first thing we do is we go into Administrator, and we go into System Setup. In here, make sure that you check on the box. Actually, no, it's not even a checkbox anymore. It's called Use Pixel Authorization Manager, and we have within here a couple of modes for doing this, server mode and station mode. Now, server mode is typically the one that you want to go with here. The reason being is that if it's going to, if you have the agent running off the server, then you select on this. If the agent is running off a different station, such as Station 1, for example, then you may want it off that. But typically, credit authorization more often than not is set for the server. Now, that being said, you would want that set. If it's set to not used, which is the default when you first load up the system, then it tells you credit authorization is not going to work, period. Okay? You have to open up that interface between the credit check system and the POS system. So in that case, make sure at least one of those is checked, preferably the server mode for that. All right, so I've got that set up in place, and now I've opened up the interface between PixelPoint and the agent. The next thing you do is you go into Payment Method Setup. And within setting up the payment methods, you now walk through this area right here where we've got all of our forms of authorization. Now, I've mentioned this before when I was going through this particular screen, but let's just take a look at what I've got within these different settings. For cash, I've got no authorization. Cash is cash. I'll accept it, period. Now, coming down to the next one, I have Visa. Visa is set up under credit card authorization. So when I do a credit card transaction, the system is actually going to reach out and say, okay, what is the credit card number? Swipe that through. What is the expiry date on it? Make sure that's included in there as well. And from there, it will go out, it will check the balance, it will come back and say, yes, it's approved, no, it's not approved, or something like that. Same applies to MasterCard and so on. Take a look down here. Just want to reiterate this one here is that we have card prefixes as well. So if you have a machine with a swipe card and you've got a credit card in your hand and you want to pay for something, when you come to that finish screen, just swipe the credit card. What it will do is the system will actually take a look at the first couple of digits in that card, and it will be able to identify a MasterCard from a Visa, from a Discovery or American Express or whatever it happens to be. And it will process it that way. And make sure that for each of those credit cards that you are using, you've got credit card authorization set up and appropriately programmed within the credit check agent as well. American Express, same thing. Diners, same thing. Take a look at all the prefix numbers for diners. Okay, now I'm into a thing called foreign currency. Foreign currency, you know, it's cash, it's money. I'll take it in any form if I do allow for that. And here's the exchange rate for that based on my base currency, and no authorization is required for that. On account. On account is a form of member account, okay, or a house credit. And so on here, if I'm Scott the VIP and I walk into your restaurant and I'll say I'll have a lobster dinner and just put it on my account, then when it comes to payment time, you select on account. And if I do have, let's say, a $500 credit or $100 credit or something like that, then what it will do is it will look to member VIP authorization, which means it'll look into the member database table, and from there make sure that, obviously you'll need the member assigned to the check, and if that member record, that corresponding member record, has a balance on there that it can allow for the covering of that or even a portion of that meal, then it will allow you to put that on account, in which case then they owe the establishment and they can pay later on with that. Debit would be with a debit card, obviously, in which case then it's going to interface with the credit card credit verification system, and on there it will tie into the bank account and it'll look for a PIN number and all that kind of stuff as well. I also have one here, government voucher as well. So in this, government vouchers may be handled through a credit card verification system, in which case then it may be a custom design for that. Okay, and the government vouchers, I think I did explain that, and just don't confuse your brain with it. But anyway, and I think that's, oh no, and gift card. Now gift card, I sell gift cards on my system. I go into that wizard, I walk through it, and I sell house gift cards. Okay, so Scott's Burger Emporium, and you can buy a Scott's Burger Emporium gift card within my establishment, and when I go through that wizard to sell it, then it will look to the member VIP authorization for that, not gift card third party. The reason for that is that what it will do is it will create that member record called gift card, and it will put a prepaid balance on it. And so every time I use that card, I'm swiping through basically a member card. It's just printed on it. It says gift card, but you swipe it through. It's a member card. It will bring up the member record, and from there it will deplete the balance from that given card. So that's why it's important that when you are setting up internal house gift cards like that, use member VIP. If you're using third-party software, then within your agent, you set that accordingly, along with gift cards third-party as well. And that's it. And the external authorization is for authorization outside of the system as well, where it will require some form of authorization number. Maybe you do that over the phone, for example, if that's the case. And as far as how it looks in the front end, let's just do a quick look at that. We'll just do a quick little transaction. Okay, so I'm going to go to table 14, party of 5. I'm going to order this, 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 and this, and I'll go to that, and that, and that, and that. Okay, so I've got some stuff here. $31.90 is my total for this. Now, from this point, I'm going to go into Finish. And here I am on the Finish screen. Now, within the Finish screen, just before I actually tender it off, just take a look down the bottom. There's that gift card wizard. So if you were to sell a gift card, you select on that. I can sell a gift card, or I can do it on account, payment like a form on account as well. And then from there, you can walk through the wizard process on that. Okay, I'm not going to do that, though. We've already covered through that. But what I am going to do here is I'm actually going to pay for this with my Visa card. So I'm going to select Visa. Now, again, at this point, rather than I wouldn't have to select Visa, because I would just swipe the card and it would know it's a Visa, but I don't have a swipe on my laptop, so we just won't do that. So I select on Visa, apply Visa. Now, in here, if you haven't swiped it already, it can allow you to swipe again, so I can swipe the card through. In this case, I'm going to select manual enter because I don't have a swipe reader, in which case then it comes up with this. If your swipe reader is broken, just follow through the same process and manually put in the number that's on the card. Now, because I set this up with demo mode approve all, it doesn't matter what number I put in, so I can put in any number, and it doesn't even have to be the full length. I could just put in a single 8, for example. Enter the expiry date, and it doesn't have to be a valid date either, as long as I've got a number in there. Now, here it is right now. It's seeking out authorization for this, but it's doing it internally, and then it comes back approved. So within here, here's my whole thing that prints out. So there's the check right there. I'll close that. And here is the whole swipe reader here, or the credit slip, in which case then shows as far as all this being done. Payment approved, Visa, table 14, and within all this, the card number, it does actually mask out all of that card information as well. And then down here, I can add in the tip and the total and so on. Now let's say, we'll just follow through this whole logic for a moment here. It's $31.90. I leave on, let's say, a $5 tip. I'm cheap that way. But let's say I put in a $5 tip, so it'll be $36.90. And there's the total. I sign that. I take my copy, you take your copy, and we go our respective way. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, now, as Scott the server, I now have my slip with the $5 tip on it. What do I do with it? I now go into your settings. I can do this at the end of my shift, or you can do it right away, depending on whatever's convenient for you. And down the bottom, I have here Add Tips. Selecting on this, you'll see I now have that transaction showing up on the screen. It's reference number 2033. I will need that reference number later on. And within here, I've got my name, supervisor, the reference number is with a Visa. It was approved, and within here, $31.90. Now, what happened here is that the $31.90, hypothetically, went across to the credit card verification system, went across to the bank. The bank said, yes, okay. It came back to the credit verification system, which came back to PixelPoint and said, okie dokie, no problem. Now, along with that, there was the allowance for a charged tip as well, because it's very typical to, within a hospitality industry, to add a charged tip on top of the total that comes across. This is important when you're setting up. It kind of differentiates between retail and hospitality. Retail, you don't tip the guy who sold you a shirt. or sold you, a bottle of soda or something like that. But in a restaurant, it is typical to tip the person on a credit card transaction. So in here, there's two things I can do with this. First of all, there's add tip, in which case then I identify $5 for that. Or in some cases, what they might do is they might just, rather than figure it out themselves, they just change the bottom line total, and they'll say $40. Okay, so what is it, $40? I'm terrible with math. I can't figure it out. So what I can do is just put in total with tip, just put in $40. In this case, I'll just do the add tip. Okay, so it brings up the add tip thing here, and from this, I'll put in $5. And there's the total right there. So that's how it calculates it that way. All right, now if I have multiples of these to do, they will all show up down the left-hand side. I can select on OK and Next, in which case then it will advance on to the next one. In this case, I just have this one, so I'll select on OK. And there we go. So I've just done that transaction. And now when I do my cash out, then actually I can, no. Okay, so here I am with the tender balance screen on this. And you'll see within here, it shows everything I've done in terms of cash and Visa and so on. This is all tender balancing. You activate this within Payment Method Setup. And on this, I have to put in just to balance out whether I'm over or short or something like that, what my numbers are. Take a look over on the right-hand side. It says there, charge tip. See, so that's already been added into that as well. So that basically when I generate my cash out report, it will tell me, okay, here's the amount of money to take out of your till prior to giving it to your manager, so that you have your charge tips. They're all paid for. You stick the cash in your pocket, you go home. And then at the end of the day, when the establishment settles the batch, because right now it's just pre-authorized right now, when they settle the batch, then all of that charge tip money will be brought back into the establishment again. There's also surcharge on that charge tip as well. All right, remember that, where I talked about where the bank may charge like 3%, for example, for processing its transactions, and you can actually have the 3% of that $5 tip actually pulled off as a surcharge as well. In which case, then I would have had maybe like $4.70, and 30 cents would have covered the surcharge on the tip. So they're paying their portion. You as the owner are paying your portion as well. We also have things such as floats, all right, which is your beginning cash. Pickups, which is cash that was sent across to the safe. The manager came, pulled out a stack of 20s and put them in an envelope and stuck them in the back. You'll actually get a chip for that you would have stuck in your drawer to account for that. Also pay-ins and payouts as well, so miscellaneous things where cash is coming and going within your till, then they would be all accounted for in there as well. So in this, for example, I'm just kind of getting back to where we are. So within cash right now, I'm negative $5. I guess I owed $5 for something. So actually, this is a good one. I'll do a negative on here. Negative, and then I'll put in $4.99. So there it shows I'm off by 1 cent. And within here, within my Visa, it's showing a calculative $36.90. Okay, so that includes that $5 tip. So in there, I will take a look at my totals on this. And the nice thing is when you're going in and doing multiples of these as well, let's say I had a whole stack of different Visas. Rather than pre-count them and then here's my total, what I can do is just go through one at a time. I'll say, for example, okay, here's one for $1.48. All right, and on there I'll click on Add. So there it's added in there. Here's another Visa for $12.50. Add, and I'll add that in there as well. And what it will do here is it will show how it's calculating out as you progress through those. So you don't have to pre-add them up and then put in the final total. You actually do it on the fly right here. Just go through each one of your Visas. So I'll just match this out here. $13.98. Add, and there we go. Oh, and now I'm all messed up. So much for my math. But anyway, you go through and you figure all that out. All right, and when you're done with all that, then you can click on OK. And at this point, then it will go in and do a cash out of you. There's my cash out report. And here's all my information that shows up in here in terms of my time worked, all right, product information in terms of what I've actually sold, number of transactions, customers, and so on like that, and then a breakdown of all your different tenders. In this case, I just had Visa and cash, for example, and what all was within there as well. And then an overall summary of how I did within within my shift. All right, and I'll just close that off, and there I've done a cache out. Cache out button has disappeared as well. Now, the final step within this is now I am Scott, the manager, and I need to settle my batch, okay? I have all these credit card transactions that have been pre-authorized, but not necessarily, there's been no transfer of funds that has actually taken place. It's just been, those funds are held within the bank, and they are pre-authorized saying, yes, you have sufficient funds for it, but now I want to actually transfer that. So within here, then what I can do, there's a couple of things you can do. If I ran the end-of-day process, then I'm presented with this screen, day finished sales. And from here, it can go through and just make sure that everything is done. Now on this, for example, if there's any open tables, open transactions, and so on like that, they'll show up within here. I can view it, I can take care of it, and so on like that. So you want all your checks closed. The next thing is all of your charge transactions. If there's any outstanding tips that need to be applied, then within here you can go ahead and select on them and do that. If not, then it's got here, it just shows settle batch, in which case then I can settle the entire batch that's ready to go with that. I'm going to actually do this in another area in just a moment. I'm not going to continue on with this. Also clock out employees. So within here, with the exception of myself, there's no other clocked in employees. Otherwise I can go within here, I can cache them out, I can clock them out right within this one screen here. So everything you need for an end of day is conveniently tucked away within this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to settle my batch through the authorization manager. Let's take a look at this. You'll see within here right now it shows nothing. Now that $31 transaction that I did on Visa would have shown up within here prior to me adding the tip to it. Once you add a tip to it, then it's moved from here, list pre-authorized, over to list forced. And there is that $31 transaction right there. So this tells me that this is now ready to go, the tip has been applied, and so on. If it's a $0 charge tip, okay, I left you $5 cash, or I didn't tip you at all, then you still have to go through this process because every charge record needs to actually have full processing done with it, which includes adding on the tip. So if it's a $0 tip or a $100 tip, whatever it happens to be, or anything in between, then you have to go through this on every one of those charge transactions. Is it a pain in the butt? Yes, but if you want your money, you'll do it. Okay, so list forced is all within here. I've got all of my different charge transactions on this. And then from this, I can select on settle all charges end of day. Are you sure you want to settle? Yes. Now, you can actually settle all charges at any time that you are in this particular status right here. If you have no charge transactions with outstanding tips on them, then you can settle your charges, 50 times a day if you want. And if there's anything within here to settle, then it will go ahead and do that. You just have to make sure that this is empty. Settle all charges will not function if there is anything listed within pre-authorized but does not have the tip applied to it. Okay, so in this, I'm going to say yes. Batch settlement in progress, please wait. Now, my recommendation here is that you do actually wait for this to happen. If for any reason you don't want to wait, you can select on don't wait. It will process it in the background, but it's always best to do this because just to make sure that the whole thing has transferred across appropriately. Empty means now everything's been emptied out. All of the stuff has been done. Batch settlement is complete. Okay, and you're ready to rock and roll again. Okay, so that's how you go about doing that. So that kind of gives you a good idea in terms of how credit authorization works and so on. All right, I could show you more, but I'm going to hold off because basically we got 10 minutes left here. So what I'm going to do at this point, Leslie, is I'm going to open up for questions, and if anyone has anything pertaining to today's session or potentially even yesterday's as well, I'll allow for that, then by all means go ahead and give me a question.
Sure. If you have a question, please type it into the question panel, and I'll go ahead and read it as it comes into the queue. I've got one question that has come in regarding backup.
Yep.
The partner is asking, I have several demo databases not located in the /pixel database. Will any of the backup programs permit backup or restore of demo databases?
Ooh, repeat that question for me, just so I make sure I got it correct.
Sure. I have several demo databases not located in this /pixel base. Will
All right,
any
so,
of the...
no, okay, so it's several demo databases that are not situated within the, I take it, the Pixel SQL folder?
It seems to be the case.
Okay,
It's
all right.
all in caps. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and all right, so finish the question, please.
Will any of the backup programs permit backup or restore of the demo databases?
Okay. A demo database is no different from a conventional database. It's just a matter of how you name them and so on. So basically, what the PixelPoint system is going to look for is a file called Pixel SQL Base 10. Right here, actually, I'll give you an idea of, because I've actually got something like that situated in my case as well. Okay, in here, I'm going to go into my Pixel SQL folder, and you'll see in here, what I have is a number of different files here. And for example, scott.zip is actually just a zip file, and it contains a Pixel SQL base 10.db and log file for stuff that I've done. I also do a lot of different database reviews and so on like that within here. And it's just a matter of replacing this with another file that would be named as such. Okay, so that being the case, within the Pixel SQL subfolder, you can create, for example, a subfolder, and you can load in all of your demo databases within there. And in this, then what you can do is just, if there's one that you want to show, is just take the conventional one that you've got here, and I recommend just zipping the DB and the log file. Here, let's just get my stuff out of the way. I recommend zipping the DB and the log file and just saving it there or within a subfolder or something like that. Then take the one that you want to use and put it in place of those in there. Of course, you have to make sure that the SQL and License Manager are turned off when you do this whole transfer of files. But that being the case, then you can actually do that within there. One other thing I might want to point out as well, because you're referring to multiple demo databases, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But for any of salespeople, if you are doing I'm tripping over my tongue here. If you are doing a demo and you want to have just one really good demo database, but you want it to apply to all different types of applications, you can actually do that as well. And here's how you do it. You go into your programming of the PixelPoint system, and you program a different menu for each station. So for example, station 1 will be my fine dining menu, station 2 might be a Burger King, station 3 might be an ice cream place, station 4 might be a Chinese food place. And then when you program in multi-menus like that, it's the same theory in your head as what I was talking about when I was discussing like food courts, for example. How you can have multiple menus and so on. You assign these different menus to the different stations. Now, the thing is, how do I actually access the system so that it functions as an ice cream parlor, for example? Here's what you do. You go into the Pixel POS folder. Okay, I'm going to back up from here again, go into Pixel POS. And in this folder, this is kind of digging into tomorrow. I wasn't going to do this, but I'll show you right now just because it seems pertinent to what we're discussing here. In this, I have a list of all my different applications. And in this, I've got this file right here that says PixelPoint POS.exe. Now, this is not the actual exe that you're executing when you select to run the front end. Actually, what you're running is this one down here, POS Station Exec, which is the executable. This one is the raw core program for the front end operation. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a copy of this, and I'm going to exit out. I'm going to go to my Windows desktop here. I'm going to right-click and paste a shortcut of that on there. Okay, so there's my shortcut to the station end right now. Now, if I tried to run this right now, it's going to come up with this error message telling me that I must have a station number parameter assigned to it. Now, there is actually an INI file within Windows that identifies what station I'm working on, because when I did the station install, it said I want station 1, that's where I'm working on. in here, if I wanted to run PixelPoint as station number 2, and I had it all programmed for an ice cream parlor, you take this core program, right-click, Properties. Within the target line, go to the end of it, put in the space, and then the desired station number, in this case 2. Now, when I run this, it's actually going to run the front end, and take a look at this down the bottom right. It's now functioning as station number 2. So for any of you salespeople who are setting up your demo databases and so on, you can set up as many different applications as you want within one PixelPoint database. And then just within here, you set up some icons on the front end within your Windows so that you start up your SQL, you start up your license manager, and then depending on which one of those icons you choose, that will determine how your system is going to look and function when you actually log into it. So that's just a little trick to do. All right, that was a bit of a spoiler for yesterday or for tomorrow because I was going to show you that tomorrow, but that gives you an idea of what you can do there. It just seemed pertinent for today's topic. Any more questions? Or did I answer that one? I may have deviated off.
Questions in the queue.
Is there anything else, Leslie?
No, I don't see any other questions in the queue.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, hopefully, whoever asked that question, I hope I answered your question, and if I did, I hope I elaborated with something constructive as well. All right, we'll give a few more seconds here. If anyone has any further questions, go ahead. Okay, last call at the bar. Anything?
Nope, nothing so far.
All right, I think we're good then for today. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and attention. We've just completed session 11, so the last one left is tomorrow's session for 12, and we'll just do some closing information on that. I'm actually not even sure I'll be able to fill the full 2 hours for it, but we'll certainly go in, and if there's any holes that need to be plugged up, then we'll take care of that at that time as well. Okay, so, and also I'm going to elaborate a little bit. I'm going to offer you some information as far as just general concepts of some other PixelPoint products as well, what we got going on out there as well. All right, so thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow. Take care.